Afternoon everybody. As you can see, we've got a Meccano crane, and from my best guess, because there's no titles to each section for each model in the instruction book these days, it's a floating crane going on the way the supports are here. It's a model from a 2004 20 model multi-model set, and this is the box of that set. It was an eBay buy, probably not that much, trying to get them as cheap as possible if you can. I doubt if I paid any more than 12 quid all in, maybe 15 tops. It was sealed though. If it's say a 99p start price and it's a bit vague whether it's complete or not, then I might have a bid, but I generally don't bother if there's a bit of vagueness in the description of how many parts are still left with the set. But this one was sealed. It was a bit knocked about, it's even more so now, it's done a bit of travelling. But a nice crane, and the crane is probably the first model of Meccano, really, I suppose. It's certainly what inspired it, so the story goes, cranes. And to be honest, this is probably the best model I've made from the multi-model sets, although the aerial arrow from the next version of the 20 model multi-model set, which I think mine was a 2013 set, with the aerial arrow type sports car, that's pretty good, although it tends to pull one way, but it does go rather rapidly. This one has very little issues with the set. There are a couple of minor things, but I've got round them fairly easy, with not too much thinking. And it's a decent model, and it actually works very well, which is why I say it's one of the best multi-model sets I've made. I have put the old t-shirts up for you, so the model doesn't get lost in the background, but as you can see, they're not really big enough. So we'll get in a bit closer and we'll show you around it. But for now, we have slews around. It'll go all the way around. You've got to watch the wire, of course, on the battery box. It will go all the way around. The axles here are just really for show. The strength is all in this structure here and here. But for now, we'll show you it working, if I get it the right way. There's a slightly dodgy switch on the battery box. So as you can see, it goes down nicely. And it comes up nicely. Not too fast, but not too slow either. And it's got quite a decent bit of lifting capacity for what it is. If I work it out correctly, it's got about a 16:1, I think it is, ratio overall, because we're using, there's a washer in there and in between the two, and it acts as a bit of a pulley. Although the washer is fixed because that's solid, there's enough clearance for the cord to move through quite freely, as you've seen. And just to give you an idea of its capacity to lift, I've got no scales, I'm afraid, so I can't really tell you exactly. But we've got a bunch of keys here, and I tried. This is the only thing I really got to lift when I was just completed the model. And you might probably thinking, how the hell do you grip anything with that hook? Well, it's quite easily, really. I don't know if you call it a hook or a grab, but we call it a grab. It's got an encapsulated nut there, making that a lock nut, and I've done it tight enough so it's quite stiff to turn, so it can hold things to an extent. So we'll put that on there like that, and no doubt now we're on film it'll slip off. And it lifts that quite easily without really much protest. And of course with a bit of weight it helps it to go down easy as well. So pretty good from the lifting point of view. Now that's quite a bit of a mug. Now if I just grab a normal mug, I'll use my one for my tea at the moment. A Stewie mug. Now as you can see, there's a fair difference in the size. Yes, I know that one needs a wash. It will lift this. It tends to need a little flick to get it started, so we're just past the limit with that really. Of course there's not enough weight in the crane to hold it down at the back, so you do have to support it. One of the things with the crane as a model, it is quite flexible here with this strip. However, that's an 11-hole strip, 5.5 inch long. There is one spare in the set, and you probably just might be able to, with the standard length bolts there are a few, there's a washer there for example, but you may just be able to double that up, which would make it a lot stiffer, which you sort of might do later on, but as a model overall it does work well. Doesn't really need any fettling unless you just want to, you know, just take it that little bit further. But it's quite a decent model. It's 3 volt, i.e. it's got the 2 battery box. I couldn't see why you couldn't fit a 6 volt there. The motors are 3 or 6 volt, and there should be enough clearance for it to swing, which would make it very strong and of course a bit quicker as well, mind. At the moment it's quite a decent pace, so it's nice to control. Before we go a bit closer to the details of the model, this is the instruction book for the set, and here we have the start of the build. Stage 1 there. Well, stage 1 proper is putting the battery box together on the motor really. I did have an issue with one of the nuts because the moulding was a bit tight, so I had to force it in with a spanner, but it was okay. That was just, it was a bit of extra flashing really on the moulding. Pretty easy to do with the wires. And then we start the model proper, and as is nearly always the case with these paired ones, you start with a motor and add to the motor with brackets or whatever. We put the first gear on that one and progress through. There's 24 stages. If you take the slight problem fitting one of the nuts into the battery box as the first issue, if that's far too strong a word really for this model, the next problem we had was the I say problem. Once you built the structure here and then the cab, you fit the cab inside there between the two. However, because there's a slight curve or slight angle, shall we say, slightly curved you might say there, obviously it's almost to a point there and it comes down and spreads. This cab roof is a little bit wide to fit into there. I haven't looked to see if there's any washers left, but of course if there's any washers to spread this out a little bit here, you'll need some more further down. I'll show you the shape of the beam, shall we call it, in a bit. That was a little fiddly putting that into there, and just one stage on, stage 18, if we look around the rear of the crane here, you'll see this orange plastic thick strip. Now, because you have fitted these 1 inch by 1/2 inch angle brackets both sides of this box section here, those are just slightly wider than 3 holes should be. So there is a slight alignment issue, nothing that's too difficult to get by. There's enough, shall we say, play in the system, in the holes, in the bolts. There's enough leeway to make it fit, and then once it's in, it's okay. So stage 18 was where we had to fit the cab in between these beams here. As I've said about the width problem, slight width problem, when you're building these models, sometimes it's best not to tighten everything until the next stage when you know exactly what's what. And one of those occasions is this. When you build this section, stage 17 I think it was, 16 or 17, you put this double bent strip across here. It's 1.5 inch wide, but you don't really know exactly what the angle of it's going to be. At the moment it's vertical there, and it's correctly adjusted now, but for a bit of extra strength, and as it's all in one unit apart from the base, when you get to that stage, leave these slightly loose, and then when you've fitted the cab, adjust the cab down so it rests on the battery box, thus being quite strong. The only flex there is in the base. Then tighten them up. In the same vein as leaving certain items a little bit loose until a later stage so you know exactly where to put certain items, the same goes for these 1 inch by ½ inch angle brackets. Now these were put on very early in the build, perhaps was in the first 2 or 3 stages, onto the box section that surrounds the transmission and fits onto the motor. When I come to put these rods on, stage 21, the angle of this was too far around this way, making these rods essentially too short. So I had to adjust those. So again, sometimes take a best guess, wait till you get onto the later stages where it involves other parts, and then readjust to suit. These were a little bit fiddly to put on, but not too bad. As I say, they don't really do anything. As you can see, there's a bit of flex there. That's sort of a flexible coupling really, but it does look the part. Right, we move on now to almost the end of the build. We're talking stages 22 and 23 of 24 stages, and it's a simple 2 stages, just adding these plastic rods here. The instructions though show that these are dead straight. Impossible. You can't have them dead straight because the axle is in the way on this side, and because of that, a simple fix, just slacken off the bolts either end and raise the angle. In this case I only did it at the one side. Just raise the angle slightly so you clear the axle. Now the same goes for the other side, but this time I tweaked them both just slightly. It's probably more troublesome if you left it as it was, because it actually touches the rubber grommet there. The other side, it's a plastic small spacer where the axle could run inside it, so it probably wouldn't cause any issues with that side. But this side, it does clear now with that slight curve. It's only a slight curve and very easy to work out because it doesn't show you in the instructions. You've just got to be careful with this model though, because it will turn all the way around just about, but you just got to watch those wires, so it's easy to go all the way around there like that. All in, we had a build time of about 2 3/4 hours, and again I was doing my notes and I was watching telly as I was doing it, so I would say a couple of hours should be quite enough to build this model, there being no real issues, just the few niggles as we've already stated. Now it's not that big a model. I did have a tape measure somewhere, but we're looking at approximately, I don't know, about 1 foot high, a little bit more than that. It does though make, even though it's not massive, make it awkward to video in the workshop. So I'll show you a bit more around the model. You've already seen the transmission, and I showed you it operating from the other side, and I'll show you some of it, at least most of the model. You'll be able to see the gears working, or some of them, the pulley working, and the grabber going up and down. So let's have a go. As I say, the switch is a little bit temperamental. There you go. It does work nicely. You see the grabber going out of shot, and it's right at the top of the beam now, and we're coming back down. Works very smoothly and quietly. It was a little bit noisier than that, but I did my old trick of spraying furniture polish on the gears and trying to keep it away from the drive belt. So I'll just add it again for you. You can see the transmission working nicely and the grabber going up and down. Now there may be, I haven't looked exactly what parts are left, but as I said, there are quite a few. There may be, it may be possible to add a hook to the grabber, even if it's only by putting a long bolt through one of the holes, and then using a bit of cord or another drive band to attach to other things. So it's not bad at all, this model. It is quite nicely detailed, I suppose, in a basic fashion. The cab's quite nice, and you've got the guards to stop you falling out. And it's also nice that you got this to keep you away from the belt. Not that it really stops you, but it's a nice touch. It could do with some counterbalance at the rear. As you can see there's not a lot there. And there you can see where the cord is attached to the final rod in the transmission. And let's once you've got it on neat once, it is playing up a bit now, but by hand it took me about 10 minutes to wind it on neat. It's bunching up now because it's hit the floor. But what I would suggest is that anybody who's, once you had a bit of a play with it, make sure you've had a bit of weight to the string so it rolls up neatly. See, that's not too bad now. Does help when you go the right way. Well, it just gets better, folks, as long as this load clears the side of the table. She started this all on her own. I've had to add a bit of string so I could grip it better with the grabber. But there you go, lifted the mug all on its own. I do have to hold back, as I said before, but there you go. I'll just drop it down, which is easier, of course, a lot easier now. The base is not really strong enough for this sort of thing. Well, I say it could be beefed up a little bit, and it's a great model in its own right, and with a few little tweaks could be even better. But it's fine as it is, really. I say one of the best, if not the best, multi-models model I've made, and it's an old one. So there you go, folks. I can't loose the back of the crane because it'll fall over. See you again. There is some other multi-models sets that I've had to play with, but they are by far some of the worst ones, and they'll be coming as soon as I've had a mess with them and see if I can make them better with the parts in the set. So bye for now.